Tina, take it away.
Okay, thank you. The rain is coming down in sheets. Zero visibility. The windshield wipers could barely keep up. The driver, white knuckling the steering wheel, and I was sitting in the passenger side, completely helpless. I knew we had to get out of the storm, so I'm looking for a place to turn off and get off the road. And I see something up ahead, and I said, "Come, turn right, turn right. I think this is the way we can get off out of the storm." And as we drove further, the water started to come up in the car, and the level started to raise, and we just kept going. And then I woke up, and I've had this reoccurring dream like 5 times. And it wasn't until about 5 years ago that I kind of started to figure it out. So what I want to do is I want to tell you that story, or my story. But before I begin, I want to tell you that I'm going to tell it. It's my version, and I'm going to do it with the utmost respect for my daughter, because it starts when she was diagnosed with BPD at age 13. And I realize that I will never be able to understand the depth of her suffering because I don't have BPD. And I can't imagine to tell you what it was like for her. So I'm going to give you my story. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a therapist. I'm a mom and a wife and a family member that loves my family, and we struggle. So how did I get to family connections? So it started when right around age 12, when puberty hit, and my daughter, I didn't know what was happening. It just wasn't herself, and we were in therapy, and the therapist looked at me and she said, like whispered, "I think it's BPD." And I'm like, okay, what is BPD? And then I did something that everybody does. I Googled it and then was scared the crap out of me. You know, there was no hope. I got into a forum and people were like, run. It's never going to get better. And I thought, no, you are not my people. I'm not going to abandon her or my family. I love her. I have to do something. And so before I got out of that forum, someone had posted about a class through NEABPD Family Connections. So I went on the website and put it in an application, and it was, I think, March, and I was really, really lucky. It was the fall that I got offered a class. And so I live in outside of Atlanta, and I would drive to Atlanta about an hour each way. And the very first class, I'm in a room with people I don't know. And the leader said, you know, we know you're here to have hope and to help your loved one. And really, this class is about you. It's to help you. You are the only person that you can change. And then it was like, I looked around at all of us, and I just want you to picture, like, we're in the water and we're treading raw water, and some people, like, you know, barely have their head up, and, you know, others are just, you know, treading fiercely. And I think all of us, you know, we're doing that at some point. And I just knew, okay, when I started to hear what people, their stories, and I was like, okay, this is my life. This is my life vest right now. And if I don't put it on, I can't help anybody else. I can't help my family. And so that's what I did. So I have a slide, a little presentation. So I'm going to take you through what I learned in family connections. and the life vest that they gave me. So, okay, I'm going to share my screen, and let's see if I can do this. Okay, so like I said, I was in a room. We all had our life vests on, and we were about to learn about BPD. We had the support of one another, and we were going to learn some skills. So the first thing I learned about BPD was hope. And I like to think this is like a sticker, because that's what stuck with me, okay, in the beginning, was people can get better. You know, the hope that the counselor gave me was one day she will eventually go to college. I'm like, what? What? And learning that, you know, with treatment, people have a really good chance of getting better. And in time, I have an experience with loved one that doesn't get treatment and has gotten better. So that was the first thing that stuck with me, is I felt hopeful. So the next thing was this number, 256. I don't know if you know this, but borderline personality disorder has 256 different combinations. It's one of the hardest physical and mental illnesses to diagnose. And to me, that was huge. Like it made it legit, because we had every different diagnosis from, you know, bipolar, opposition defiant disorder, maybe ADD. And I'm like, wow, you know, this is complicated. And so that just really resonated with me. And then skills. Okay. So you can love your loved one, and I love my daughter, and it's not enough. You know, it's not, there's no handbook, okay, that says this is how you do this. I wish there was, but there isn't. And I needed to learn how to be more effective in my communication with her and in my family. And I was just kind of lost. So this is my library of trying to figure it out. And I know most of you probably have read books and books, and some were better than others. And like I said, you know, was she strong-willed or was she dreamer? I'm a fixer. I just wanted to fix it. I wanted to learn all about it, what we needed to do, and then get her help. Okay, and I'm not alone. A lot of people that have loved ones with borderline personality disorder, that's what we want to do. We just want to help. And so we also started to learn about different treatments. And at this point, she had been in counseling, and we started the hospitalization. And I have a story for you. So at the time when this is happening, you don't find it funny, okay? But it's after that I can laugh about it now. Okay, so we are waiting 3 days to get a bed in a short-term facility. And the day gets there, and they tell us you can come, and my daughter and I are sitting in a closed small room. There's a couch, there's a chair, there's a table, and that's about it. So insurance companies, you know, we're waiting. It's a lot of red tape. You know, it was excruciating because it was hot, and it was about 3 hours at this point. So my daughter, her anxiety, and that's the other thing, is borderline, it never stands alone. There's usually something that goes with it, and anxiety and depression. Probably anxiety was the number one thing we were dealing with. So, and I had some anxiety also. So anyway, so we're in this room, and she starts telling me, this is your fault. You know, I'm trying to tell you how to help me, and you're just not listening. You know, I'm leading you to the water, Mom, but you're just not drinking. And my amygdala, like, the part of your brain that's the fight or flight or freeze, I swear, if there was an MRI of my brain right now, right at that moment, it would have like blown up, because I started to hyperventilate and I couldn't breathe. And I knew I was having a full-blown panic attack right there. So there is a woman walking by, and she looks, there's that little window, and she looks in, and she comes in, and she's like, is everything okay? Is everything okay? I'm Nurse Jackie. And if you've ever watched Nurse Jackie, it's a show. Edie Falco is the actress that plays Nurse Jackie. This is what she looks like. And this is exactly what the nurse looked like. And when she said, I'm Nurse Jackie, I looked at her like, oh my God. And she said, yeah, I know. And then she proceeded to ask my daughter, did you drive your mom here? Are you waiting to be checked in? And I'm like, no, it's not me. No, it's her. And I would like to think that I may be the only person in the entire world that takes their child for treatment at the hospital, and they're ready to admit me. So anyway, I can laugh at that now. So let's get into building the skills, which I'm going to use the analogy of a surfboard. So the first skill that I learned was relationship mindfulness. And I'm just going to go with mindfulness before we put in relationship. And I'd never really heard, like, what the heck is mindfulness? Again, this is like 5 years ago. It really, to me, it wasn't a catchy phrase. It wasn't in my wheelhouse. So this is the image when I heard mindfulness. Yep. I'm like, no, I'm out. Not shaving my head, not closing my eyes. I wear contacts at that point. It's my eyes will dry out. No, I'm not a meditator, Well, it turns out mindfulness really isn't about meditation. I learned it's about paying attention, really staying in the moment. And I had to really practice this. And I want to tell you, it was liberating. Like, my mind, with everything going on in my life, just kept going and going and going and going. And it was like almost like a rebirth. I would walk my dogs. This is Dolly Waffles and Caesar. And I would notice things, like I would hear the birds and I would see the squirrels that they're, ready to chase. And then a diesel truck had to go by, and even the smell, it took me right back to Chicago. Right after college, that's where I lived. It was a great time, and then I let it go. And then walking in the yard, I have hydrangea bushes, and I never noticed there's a lot that have a heart leaf, and I'm thinking, this is a sign. This has got to be a sign. So it opened an entire new world for me. Okay. And probably the most important thing it did for me was it allowed me to drink a cup of coffee and really taste it. I, on average, would heat my cup of coffee up in the morning 4 times. Like, I could drink it like a quarter of a time. And mindfulness made me stop and just enjoy it. And that felt pretty good. So let's add the word relationship. Okay, that gets a lot harder. It gets a lot harder because it has to do with staying in the moment and noticing the person and observing and kind of describing what's going on without judgment. And that was hard. I am an Olympic multitasker. I swear. I mean, I had a home-based business. I had 2 kids. I had 2 dogs. I was home with them. I didn't know if I was going to be able to do that. So, and the other thing was, you had to pay attention on, like I said, on purpose. And I had to be honest, most days I was like getting dressed in a raincoat and rain boots holding an umbrella. Like, I'm just waiting for the next storm to come. You know, I'm in class, I'm learning, and it's amazing. And things at home, you know, are still pretty rough. So, you know, the multitasking was getting hard. And I added this in here, and I attended your webinar, and I didn't end up multitasking as much as I thought I would. This probably is a picture of me minus the phone cord, because I'd be on a cell before family connections. Okay, so that relationship mindfulness, this is what stuck with me. All right, this is an ampersand. And this, I loved my co-leaders, because when we got to this point of the class, they said, we want you to work on removing the word but from your vocabulary, kind of. And I said, you know, once they explained it, it made sense. So I could tell, like, I could go into my daughter's room, and she's been, you know, cleaning, and I could go in there and say, yeah, hey, you know, good job over there, you know, making your bed, but what about the 215 hangers on the floor and the crap corner? Like, there's a corner, and everything that you didn't want to put away is right there, you know? So she didn't hear anything like, hey, you did a good job making your bed. It was after the but. And so I loved it. My leader said, you got to practice but reduction. And that's what I did. And, you know, so it might sound something like, hey, honey, I noticed you made your bed today. Really good job. And I know you're working hard. And the crap corner maybe needs a little work. Okay. And if I can help you, I'm happy to help you do that. And that little change, it was amazing. It was amazing. So the other part of relationship mindfulness too is something else that stuck is, oh, hold on. This is me in perpetual raincoat and with an umbrella. And sometimes I could get so ready for the next storm that I would not even experience the sunshine. So, okay. So the other thing that stuck with me, here is my glasses sticker, was I had to be curious and look and notice things and be mindful of our family environment, how not to make things worse. And one of the things that I had learned was, you know, the relationship, you know, my husband would say, you know, you have an action and there's a reaction. And what I learned in family connections is there's actually something like a transaction, and it's, you know, there's no blame. It's, this happened and this is how the person responded. And once you get to that place where it isn't blame, you're trying to figure it out and trying to make sense. It can help you notice some patterns, and it can help you notice, you know, things that, you know, they just keep coming up. It's like you have the same argument in the same situation over and over and over again. So with relationship mindfulness, I had to stop, and I had to listen. And that was probably the number one thing my family would drill into me is, you don't listen. You don't listen. I told you. And of course I want to think that I listen. And a lot of times they had a good point. And, you know, here's a tip. Listen and silent are made with the same letters. And I tell myself that, because that's something that I really have to continue to keep working on. So, you know, a lot of the relationship mindfulness too is, you know, we looked at blame. You know, that just, you know, blame, Dr. Brene Brown, love her, says, you know, blame is simply the discharging of discomfort and pain. And it really was. I mean, we didn't like sit with things. We didn't pause. Someone let the dog out or left the door open, and it was right away, who did it? You know, who let the dog out? And, you know, no one did that on purpose. They really didn't. And one thing I knew after, you know, learning more in family connections was we truly were doing the best that we could. I mean, if we weren't, wouldn't you? If you could do better, wouldn't you in that moment? So blame was hard because a lot of the times I felt blamed. And that's where you have to learn, or I had to learn, not to take things personally. You know, sometimes it had nothing to do with me. That whole transaction, you know, it could be a rough day at school, it could be a rough day at work, you know, emotion dysregulation or high emotions, you know, we're all human, so it happens to everybody. You know, it's just when they get so high, like, you know, with my loved one, and, you know, she's saying things, you know, that I don't see the same way of history. You know, the higher the emotion, the more inaccurate the perception is. And that goes both ways. I mean, it totally goes both ways, because I realized in that moment too that I'm a pretty sensitive person. I am. And I tend to hold it in instead of releasing it out. And that can cause, it can cause a lot of suffering, you know, a lot of suffering, invalidation of, you know, trying to figure out your emotions. Like, I shouldn't feel that way. You know, I'm judging myself. And that was the other part of relationship fullness that I learned, that, you know, there are actually more emotions than anger, sadness, and pissed off, which seemed to, that was kind of what was going on. You know, a lot of my sadness and anger, I mean, we're all going to lose it at some point. We do. It's expected. It is. We are all going to lose it at some point. And learning about this and digging deep, a lot of my anger and my sadness was really, it was disappointment and fear. You know, I saw her suffering. I want to help, and I just kind of felt helpless, and it was really hard. It was really hard when you see your child suffering, and, you know, I'm her person. You know, I'm her mom, and you can be yourself. It was hard. It's just really hard. So, okay, so that's our first part of our surfboard. And here's another skill called radical acceptance. Now, I had no idea what this was, radical. And I'm like, what is radical? And really, radical is, it's really, really hard. Okay. So like accepting a situation is not like throwing in the towel. You don't have to like the situation that you're in. You just have to accept it. And it truly is the way out of hell. And I mean, I had accepted that, you know, my daughter struggled. You know, I wanted to be the mom at the chorus concerts and the lacrosse games. And at the end of the day, man, it was a win to get her to school, you know, and anxiety and emotions, high emotions. It's hard. It's a hard combination. So, so radical acceptance, it really started actually in my relationship, you know, in my marriage. And as I learned more about BPD, you know, no formal diagnosis, but my marriage was it was a roller coaster, you know, and I could see some of the same traits that my daughter suffered from. And then, you know, throw a layer on, you have a kid or a child who's suffering, and it can be really, really hard on a relationship. And I'm going to be honest, I had energy for one person. And it was her. It was going to be her. I was going to have to figure out the marriage thing after. I mean, you have to, we were doing the best that we could. We were staying together, and that was the goal too, is looking at, what can I do right now in this moment to not blow stuff up, because I was pretty good at that. I took things personally in my relationship. And the long-term goal is, I don't want to see my marriage end. I don't want to, if you get this, holidays sometimes are pretty challenging when you have borderline personality disorder. There's expectations and anxiety, and I couldn't imagine having two, like one at my house and one at his house. And bottom line, I love my family. I love this person. But I got to tell you what I did, because radical acceptance, you can, try to solve the problem. There's 4 ways to look at a problem. And I tried to solve this. So I'm going to share this with you. This was part of, and I say part of my, my how to change my husband, repertoire. I just kept reading, what about this? We could do this, we do this. And I'm going to apologize right now to the, to the trees, the hundreds of trees that were destroyed when I had a moment with realization that I had read all of these books and traditional marital therapy, and nothing seemed to get any better. If it wasn't in that book, it wasn't working. And that goes back to, you can have all the knowledge, but the skills, you have to do something different. So I had a breaking point, and this was probably my radical acceptance moment when I took a lot of, actually, the books that you see that are pictures. Those were some of the ones. And I got all the books, and I went down to my den, and I got a big black garbage bag, and I ripped them. I ripped page by page, and it felt amazing. And my husband came down, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, if only one of us reads these books and gets the knowledge, and the other one doesn't, nothing is going to change. These don't work. And I'm getting my frustration out, and it's cheaper than a copay to the marriage therapist. And that's what I'm going to do. I could not have been more wrong, because what I learned in Family Connections is that I can get knowledge, and he doesn't have to read the books or be in the class. Things can get better from what I do and what I respond. And it really was that moment of that, this is it. And then I had to grieve. I did. I was sad, and I was grieving the life that I thought I had signed up for, being a mom and a wife. And I had these, visions of going on family vacations in the summer with the kids. And oh man, vacations were horrible. And I say that we did have some good times, but if you want to be in control of things, driving on the road, somebody cuts you off, you're out of control. You're hungry, you want to stop and get something to eat, and there's nothing around. And then all your vulnerabilities go up, and then you get angry. So you're hungry and you're angry and you're tired, and maybe you're getting a little car sick. It was not fun. It was not fun. But what I realized at that moment was, if you can't change it, you have to change the way you think about it. And I'm going to share another slide with you. These are my journals. I have written for, oh my gosh, I'm going to date myself, but probably 30 years. And I did a trip, I'll tell you a little bit about it, self-validation, a solo trip. I needed to get away. and give myself a break. And I allowed myself to do that. And I brought a lot of these. Yeah, I am the person that goes on vacation and brings a suitcase full of books. I just do. I read them and I kept reading the same story. I mean, it was the same problems, and I was mad. I got my anger and my frustration out, and I just kept reading it over and over. And I thought, no, got to do something. We have to do something different. And so, I had lost sight of my goals. I had to turn my mind and I had to look for the positive, because I had a pathway in my brain that was like going to the negative. And I don't know if you've ever heard of confirmation bias. I love that term because I had trained myself only to look at, what he's not doing, how the relationship is suffering, how he's not helping. And then I looked for things that confirmed that. Oh, he made lunch and didn't ask me if he wanted lunch. Can he see that I'm working and I would like that? I mean, I'm telling you, I needed that mind shift. I had to switch it. And so when I got to that point and I kind of like saw the light, that's when I accepted the situation. And this is what stuck, was love. I had committed myself to this. I am going to love and look for the love. And I know it's not enough because I have to change too. My husband would tell me, Dr. Phil said, it's like a pancake. There's always two sides. And let's think about that. Relationships are 50-50. That transaction, what he was doing, what I was doing. If we're dancing, which we actually don't dance, but we're going to pretend we are, and we're doing the cha-cha, right? And I'm going forward, and then I stop, and I go here, and he can't do that cha-cha with me anymore. So you're forced to do something different, and it didn't happen overnight. But that's where, my children needed a happier home, regardless of if there was a diagnosis or a treatment. What I noticed after, 15 years of marriage is when we were doing well, the kids seemed to be doing a lot better, not well. So I want to show you my library today. And I made it about me. Not drop the change agenda. Don't have any how do I fix you books. And this is what I look at, or this is what I read. And I really like it. That, I'm an early bird, and I read how to see, how to relax, how to fight, how to eat, how to love. I love Thich Nhat Hanh, and it just kind of feeds my soul, and it goes with the mindfulness that I was learning in family connection. So this is a good thing. And I have one in here, which are like, okay, the high conflict couple. That was written by Dr. Alan Frizzetti, who created Family Connections. And I hate to admit this, but I didn't really know that book existed. I hadn't seen it, and I actually found it at a Goodwill, and it was like I had the jackpot. Okay. So anyway, so that's why that is in there, and it is a fantastic book. So, okay. Next skill, validation. Superpower, super hard to do, completely counterintuitive, at least for me when I started this. And honestly, too, I'm like, validation, what does that mean? I grew up, I'm the youngest of 7 kids. That wasn't even in our vocabulary. My mom was a nurse, and I could say, oh, Mom, man, I hurt my arm. And she was like, look at it. Oh, it's going to be fine. Do what you're doing. You're going to be fine. Or it was, I took care of 2 patients this morning, and one didn't have an arm, And so validation, yeah, I don't know. So what I learned though is that validation, it's not agreeing. It's not agreeing with someone is saying. It is truly, it's listening, and it's turning your mind to try to understand where they're coming from and not taking it personal, and really doing your best to stay mindful and give them everything. Put down your cell phone. I really like to talk while emptying the dishwasher. No, my daughter will say, Mom, I need you 100%. Put your feet facing me, put down your phone, and just be there with me. And I'm getting better at it. And she will say to me, um, you know, you're not hearing me, Mom. You're not hearing me. She will say something that I don't really agree with, and I don't know how to validate. And I'm kind of like, how do I do this? Okay, I'll give you an example. How do you validate when your kid is not getting up to go to school for the second time this week, and you've been down that road? I mean, what's valid about that? You have to go to school, right? And so with these skills, it's a little different. And, going in and saying, hey, what's going on? I'm not getting ready for school. Are you tired? I know it's really hard to get going, and before I had the knowledge, it may have been, get up and go to school. Come on, try harder, get up, and you need to go. You've missed too much time. You need to go. Let's go. And that didn't work with her. And there was a lot of things now looking back of, kind of the parent handbook that you would think, traditional parenting things, put your kids in timeout if they've done something that, you're not happy with, send them to their rooms. Man, took me a while, but I finally realized sending your child to their room when they have a fear of abandonment is not a good idea. Not a good idea. What's a better idea is to pause, maybe practice some mindfulness. Bathroom mindfulness is my favorite. If things are escalating, I'm like, God, I gotta go to the bathroom. And I wait a little while. And then when I come down, the temperature in the room has come down a little bit too. And asking questions and realizing that, yeah, she really is doing the best that she can, and try harder. I mean, it's like pretend someone's having an asthma attack and you just say, hey, breathe, stop breathing. It's just not reality. So, okay. So validation. I do have another story about a validation and relationship mindfulness in turning your mind. So as I'm learning this, I need a break. And I would go visit my family or even go out shopping all day, just mindlessly wandering around, and come home. And all I saw was the countertops aren't wiped. There's more dog hair. There's no dinner. My husband's sitting watching TV, and, there's stuff, and judgment. And the judgment I felt was, you didn't care about me. When you go do something, even when you go to work and you come home, there's dinner, the house is clean, the kids are, I just couldn't see it. And you know what? I dreaded going home, and they dreaded me coming home, because it wasn't going to be a good experience. So I changed that up. I practiced validation. And I turned my mind. So when I would come home, yeah, the dog hair was there, countertop, no dinner. What I learned to see was, oh, the house is still standing. My children, they're alive, and my husband. The dogs, they're happy to see me. Yeah, there's no dinner, but I can figure something out. And then I validated him, because I realized at that moment, he was doing the best that he could. Watching the kids, keeping up with everything, that kind of was my job. because I was home, and he helped when he could, but this was this was big. And so when I said, honey, thank you for giving me that break, I really appreciate it. And then probably the single most kindest thing he's ever said to me was validated me and said, I don't know how you do it. Wow. That was huge. That was absolutely huge. So, all right, I'm going to tell you what's stuck. I'm going to look at the time here. What stuck with me is a couple of things. So when, my loved one is having, a difficult time, and I may not be agreeing with what they're saying, and I'm trying to hear, I'm trying to give them their full attention. And my favorite word to use is, it's interesting. Telling them I'm listening. I'm not giving them advice. I'm not going down any road of discussion. It's just interesting. Okay. And then the other one that I love is, they're, my daughter can say, Mom, I had a horrible day. And this is what happened. And, I'm mad. I feel really mad. And I love to say, of course you'd feel mad. And I can also, and I can add to, who wouldn't feel mad? Makes sense. And then I love me too. My husband will tell me he has a high pressure anxiety job, and he will say, you seem to be working a lot. My favorite part of the day is, just hanging out with you, watching a show. And then I'm feeling the judgment, and he's like, you don't have time for me. And I said, well, it sounds like you want to spend some time together. He's like, well, yeah. And I said, yeah, me too. Or if they're sad, I'm sad too. So that me too, it's pretty powerful. So, okay. One more thing that stuck with me in validation. And I don't think you can see it because of the thing on the bottom, but there's a sticker for Galveston, Texas. And I took a solo trip by myself, and I have done it for the last 3 years, where I spend 5 days by myself. And I walk the beach, and I am mindful of things that I pick up. And that is huge, absolutely huge, because for so long, when I'm wearing the umbrella, or I'm wearing the raincoat and the boots and the umbrella, I can't imagine leaving. What if something happens? And it was hard for my family too. I had to give them the opportunity, though, to know that they were going to be okay if I was there or not. I mean, they kind of had to learn to swim, in a matter of speaking, on their own, because I had to get back to living. I had lost, myself of, this, the illness is hard. It can take over your life, and you have to give yourself permission to take some back. And it's not selfish. What it is, it's making you validate yourself and love yourself and have joy. And if you love yourself and have joy and happiness, you are a happier person, and you are more likely to validate them and love them. And that's really, that's crucial in my life. When I started to get a life, things got better. So, okay. All right, I'm looking at time, and I just have a couple, 2 more things. All right, so when I told my daughter about my dream, and here's the surfboard, okay? Family connections. I give me my life vest, and they had a surfboard, or I look at it as these core skills, and there's more. There's actually 6 modules, but these were the kind of the pillars, the building of really made a difference to me. The relationship mindfulness, the radical acceptance, and the validation. And I was telling my daughter about my dream, and she said, "Oh, I got a book. I got a book about dreams." She's into dreams. So I said, "Well, let me look it up." So I'm just going to read to you that, looking at my dream of being in the rain and not being in control and driving into a boat launch, and I don't die in the dream. I'm still there. And I'd like to think that the dream that continued, I would get out of the water and I would tread for a little bit. Someone would hand me a life jacket, and here's my surfboard, and I would get on it. Okay. So this is what we analyzed. So dream scenarios involving cars can symbolize a journey on a psychological or emotional level. Makes sense. In its simplest meaning, rain stands for tears and emotional release. Oh, wow. A lot of tears. So water is usually taken in dreams to symbolize all that is emotional. Did I mention that BPD, I think it needs a new name with a lot of other people, emotion dysregulation. So again, all the symbolization of emotional. And to be conscious of the rise and fall of the tides is to be conscious both of the passage of time and the rise and fall of our emotions. So it's been 5 years since I took Family Connections, and my daughter today finished her freshman year of college. I will celebrate 20 years of marriage on May 27th. Much more love, a lot of less suffering. Not perfect yet, but that's okay. And I think that the people that were with me in my first class, we were all riding those waves. And I want to end with this. In the words of John Kabat-Zinn, you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. And because of Family Connections, I know how to surf. And that's it.
Tina, that was fantastic. We've gotten so many comments of people who relate so much to what you were saying. And I know people really enjoyed this. We have a couple of questions that have come through. A couple of people are asking about how to sign up for Family Connections and what is Family Connections. So I'm going to post online for those of you who would like more information. But we do have a little bit of a wait list for people to get into Family Connections. Right now we're doing them all virtually through Zoom. So do you have any tips, Tina, for people who are on the wait list or who are looking to get into a class on what they can do in the meantime?
I do. And I'm so glad you asked that question, because the wait list, it keeps me up at night as the Family Connections manager. And there are some things that you can do. Family Connections, the skills are DBT, they're based. And there's our website. I don't know if you know this, the largest website, the largest media library on borderline personality disorder in the world. There are conferences that started when we started 19 years ago, and they're wonderful. They've got great information. So I encourage you to do that. And I also encourage you to practice. DBT has come a long way. And there are things that, there's like an app that you can practice. It really is kind of changing your mindset. And so you can do that. You can do that before you're into a class. The other thing you can do is support NEA BPD. Let's see, how do I say it? I would love to work. I think you too would love to work it for free. And the bottom line is we're a nonprofit, and your donations, it helps us keep going. You know, we want to improve the program, and you can do a financial donation, large or small, anything is appreciated. But there's also a couple other cool things that you can do. Is Amazon has something called Amazon Smile. So if you sign up for Amazon and you shop on Amazon, you designate us as your charity, and then we get a small percentage of the things that you purchase that qualify, and you don't have to pay anything more for that. Right now with BPD borderline personality disorder awareness month, we have a store on Society 6. If you search NEA BPD on the website, you're going to come up with our store. And we had a Family Connections volunteer, Jesse Finkelstein, and he did some great graphics. Actually, the coffee cup that I showed you before, Building a World Where Emotional Wisdom Prevails, that's one of his designs. And everything that you purchase, you're building awareness, and you're helping support the programs. And I guess the last thing I will say of what you can do while you're waiting for a class is do something for yourself. This can overwhelm, and it can like take over a family, and it's important that you do some self-care, especially during COVID, you know, during this crisis. And I don't know what that would look like for you. For me, it's coffee, it's early mornings walking the dogs, and it's just that peace, because not everybody, or actually not, I don't think anyone is 24/7 in the middle of a storm their entire life. And sometimes you just have to look for those moments where it's like, okay, it's calm. So, yeah.
So I think Nancy has a question for you.
Okay. Hello, Nancy.
Tina, thank you so much for sharing your story. We have had so many people say they're so moved and inspired and appreciate it. It's just beautiful. I have a little tear in my eye. We do have a follow-up question from Karen. What about when a teen comes at you with their perception of how you feel about them? How do you validate in that situation? I'm assuming like they're coming at you negatively. Is it just, wow, I hear you? Or is it validating to say, I hear that's how you're experiencing it, but I would like to clarify that I really am proud of you, or I really do love you? Or do we just listen and return to clarify later?
Okay, so like I said before, my amygdala like blows up. So if she's coming at me and she's really upset, my first instinct is to run. Like I'm in a freeze. So I'm checking myself first, and I'm deciding, am I, where am I? Am I hungry? Am I, tired? And I'm honest. I'm like, listen, I can see something's going on. You're really upset, and that's part of the validation. And I really want to talk to you about this when things have calmed down and you can hear me, and she's had treatment, so I can say, I know that part of your brain, honey, you're not going to get, we're not going to be able to go there yet, so it's taking that pause, but then it's also committing to, I promise we'll talk about it later. And then I'm not kidding, sometimes I visualize this suit of armor of nothing getting through, because it's hard to hear that, they're that discharging that discomfort and the anger and the blame. And usually after it'll come around, 9 times out of 10, it didn't start with me. It had something totally to do before she even walked in the door to get home. So I guess it's pausing. First it's checking in with yourself. Can you think? Because if your emotions are high, it's not, you're not going to be accurate, and they're not going to be accurate. And then it's finding a time when it's quiet and calm, and you both can think and be present.
Thank you. So I guess probably also how you'd answer another question we have along the same lines. How do you validate when there is aggressiveness?
Oh, You never validate any physical or mistreatment. There's, what's valid is I said something that you maybe didn't agree with, or I said you couldn't do this, or you had to do this, there's something, so you can validate that, yeah, you were really angry, and you can't come at me. I've been there, we have holes in the doors, and it's scary. What's valid is the feeling. And that's what you have to go with. And safety also comes first. It does. Safety comes first for yourself. And yeah, it's hard.
Thank you. You explained that beautifully.
We have some questions, Tina, about your husband, because you briefly mentioned him. So there was a question more about him. Does he know that he has BPD? And how did that discovery go?
Okay, so no, he would not admit it, and that's okay. We learned about like the biosocial theory, and I'm a sensitive and emotional person also, but there are some things that I kind of checked some boxes, and it was, I didn't come right out and say it, dude, I think you have BPD. It was, well, no, I did do that. It didn't go very well, but it was, trying to change him, I mean, part of that emotion dysregulation was just, high, but, and the anxiety, that coexisting condition, the anxiety was really hard. And that radical acceptance, that part of it, I was just like, he is not going to get treatment. I don't think he'll ever, admit to it. There's no medicine that he can take, and that's okay. I can't change him. I didn't cause this. I didn't cure this. And I do see hope that me changing my reactions had a definite impact in our relationship. Yeah. I think he'd admit to anxiety, but maybe not so much the emotion dysregulation. Yeah. So heavy duty traits. Yeah.
So we have two questions about your books and your reading. The first question is, can you recommend a book on BPD for someone who wants to learn more or educate themselves?
Okay. I love anything by Dr. Blaise Aguirre, who is at McLean Hospital. Mindfulness for the borderline personality disorder and adolescents. That book, even though it's specific for adolescents, and it's actually written for someone who's a teenager that is suffering from BPD, of how they can use mindfulness to improve their life. That book, it was like, again, like I said in the beginning, I will never understand what my daughter feels like, or even my husband with the anxiety and I will never understand that. But reading that book, I had a pretty good idea. And, the compassion and that was a really good book. And then if you are into videos and podcasts, oh my God, those are awesome. I walk the dogs. I listen to Dr. Karen Hall, the emotionally sensitive person. There's just great stuff on our website also. And I love too that when you go to resources on our website, they do have it based on categorized by categories, if you're looking for treatment or, relationship mindfulness. Yeah, that's probably those books. I some of the older ones, Walking on Eggshells, no, as I learned more, that one didn't work for me. The Loving Someone with Borderline Personality Disorder, that was a good one.
Can you, I don't know if you have the ability to do this. People are asking, they want to see the list of books that you're reading now. Can you go back to that screen?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, hold on. And I have to tell you, my family, they saw me with all these books today, like reading, putting them all together to take pictures. And they're like, what the heck are you doing? All right, hold on one second. There we go. Let me share my screen. So yes, these are them. This A Mindful Day by Dr. It's David Dillard Wright. I read, this is my second year. Like I do something every morning, like you can see with journals, but this one I read religiously every day. And these I read 2 pages from. These are really good. And I'm gonna have a shout out to Dr. Frizzetti, because when I took Family Connections leader training, I asked him, I said, what would be a good book to read? And he recommended Being Peace by Thich Nhat Hanh. And that just, I loved it. And it just opened up my mind. And it really, DBT, Dr. Marsha Linehan, she took the best of cognitive behavioral therapy, in my opinion. She took the best and took the skills, and then she sprinkled it with like a little bit of, Zen and, a little bit of Buddhist principles. And and it keeps reinforcing what I've been practicing and learning. So, okay. All right.
Okay, and I have another, we're over time, but I'll ask the question very quickly.
Yeah, that's okay.
If you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about your journey, what would you do?
So I mentioned that my daughter had hospitalizations, and I couldn't wave the magic wand and still be where we are today and how far we've come. And I have said, I'm living my best life. I really am. We're surviving and we're thriving. If I could go back and I could erase the time that she spent in short-term, long-term residential hospitals, I would, because it was traumatic, and it was at a time when she was a teenager, and who wants to miss school? And honestly too, sometimes I think it made it worse. I mean, there's hospitalizations. Yes, some people definitely need that help. And yeah, that's what I would go back. If I could erase that from memory and save her from that trauma and hurt. Yeah, that's what I would do.
This was so great, Tina. I can't wait for you to look at all of these comments and questions. And we're very sorry because we did not get to answer everyone's question, but Tina will look them over. And if there are any that she is able to answer, we will send out emails to those of you who have not asked. If you've asked anonymously, we won't be able to, but if you've asked and left your name, we will be able to send out emails. We thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And we look forward to learning more from you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody. Thank you. See ya.